There are two different ways how you can control a loop in Java. The first one is called count control loop. Count control means the count of the loop control variable, or simply the loop variable, decides whether or not to enter the next iteration. Whatever example we have used so far for explaining loop, they are all count control loop, where I have used a loop control variable, for example loop count in this case. That variable is initialized to a certain numeric value, 1 in this case. Then in the while loop, in the condition, I am comparing the current value of that loop control variable with some number, just to decide whether the while loop will enter the next iteration or not. And then in the end, during the modification, I am using some kind of arithmetic operation, in this case just an increment by 1, to change the value of the loop control variable. So everything over here is controlled with some arithmetic operation, and because of everything is controlled with arithmetic operation, and it depends whether the while loop will enter the next iteration or not. Since it depends on the count of the loop control variable, it is called count controlled while loop. Now there is a second way to control a while loop, that is called Sentinel controlled while loop. In Sentinel controlled while loop, unlike the count of the loop control variable, here the user has the freedom to change the loop control variable or the loop variable after each iteration of the loop, to decide whether or not to enter the next iteration. So just look at the example in here. So here, if you see the example, there is one loop control variable input. In this case, I have initialized it to number 1, just like our count control loop. Then in the while loop, instead of writing anything like less than or greater than, instead of comparing the value for less than or greater than, I have simply used this not equals. That is whether the value of the loop control variable is not equal to some specific value. In this case, it is 0. So it means that loop will continue until the value of input is not equals 0. So that is the meaning. But this is also very similar to this while count control while loop. Both of them, inside the condition there are some initialization, and then in the condition, in both the cases there is some kind of comparison over here. So until here there is not much difference. The major difference between count control and while the Sentinel controlled while loop lies in how you are changing the value of the loop control variable. Here in this example, if you see, I am taking the input from the user by utilizing a scanner S. Okay, so by using this S variable, I am asking the user to enter a new input, and this new input in the end of the iteration will decide whether the loop will enter the next iteration or not. So that means user will enter a new number over here. Let's say the user input is something other than 0. Let's say user input is 2 in here. So with so 2 will be assigned inside this input. So with this value 2, the while loop will go to this condition over here. So it will check that whether 2 not equals 0 or not. So of course 2 is not equal 0, so it will come inside the while loop and the while loop will execute again, and then again it will ask the user to enter another new input. Let's say this time instead of 2, the user input will be some other positive number, let's say 100, something like that. Now with this 100, again this while loop will be checked, like, well, the new user input, that is 100, whether this is not equal 0 or not. Well, of course 100 is not equal 0, so the while loop will execute again, that is iterate once again, and then in the end of the iteration again it will ask the user to enter a new input. Now this time let's say the user input is 0. Now whenever the user will input 0 over here, this 0 will be checked again in for the inside this while loop condition, and whenever it will come here, it will see that well, 0 not equals 0. Is it true or false? Well, of course this is false because the user input is 0. So whenever the user input will be 0, the while loop will break and it will come outside and it will print out in here, and the while loop will break. And in the next, so this is about the Sentinel controlled while loop. In the next video, I'm going to clarify the concept with a simple Java demo program.